Thorne knows where the drop is. He's moving the package up by dawn. We have to intercept him before he reaches the extraction point, or this is all over.
The moment froze, the air thick with gasoline and bad decisions. The one on the SUV smirked again and opened the driver's door. "Enjoy your evening," he said, like he had not just shattered something sacred. I did not say a word. Not yet. I just memorized the logo on their vests, Fairlawn Ridge Security Services, and the license plate as they drove off, tires crunching over gravel like breaking bones. That is when I went inside. That is when I saw the sling, the bruises, the look on my grandpa's face. And that is when everything I had been trying to outrun, every war, every ghost, every sleepless night, came crawling back home. The phone call had come an hour earlier, just as the desert sun was bleeding over the horizon. I was 100 miles out, the Harley roaring beneath me, devouring asphalt that shimmered like black glass. The caller ID said Fairlawn General Hospital. That kind of call does not wait. The nurse's voice was careful, polished, trying not to say too much. "Mr. Vance, your grandfather has had an accident." I asked, "What kind?" She hesitated. "He fell." I knew she was lying before she finished the sentence. Art Vance does not fall. The last time he did, he was jumping out of a HOA over the Mekong Delta, and he landed shooting. I hung up, turned the bike around, and opened the throttle until the engine screamed like it wanted revenge as bad as I did. I hit the hospital in under 90 minutes. My boots echoed through sterile hallways that smelled like bleach and denial. Grandpa sat upright in bed, smaller than I remembered, his arms swallowed by a white cast that reached from his knuckles to his shoulder. His eyes were the same, though, sharp, defiant, alive. "Took you long enough," he rasped. "I was busy," I said, dragging a chair to his bedside. "Looks like you were too." The cast was ugly, thick, cruel. The kind of break that does not happen from gravity. "What happened?" I asked. He looked at the window instead of me. "Homeowners Association," he said flatly. "We had a disagreement. My blood ran cold." He told me about the new HOA president, Karen Tom, a woman who ran the neighborhood like a dictator with a clipboard. She had been bleeding the residents dry, raising fees, issuing fines for everything from mailbox colors to grass length, but this was not about uniform lawns. She wanted control, and more than that, she wanted the land. "She is trying to sell the whole neighborhood," Grandpa said. "Developers want it. Office park, condos, whatever brings in more tax dollars." He coughed, wincing. A few of us said no. Now she is sending her own kind of persuasion. He nodded at his arm. My jaw locked so tight I could hear my teeth grind. "She said we had 72 hours to sign, or she would start evictions," he continued. "Forceful ones." I stared at the clock on the wall. The ticking felt like a countdown. 72 hours? I repeated. "That is generous of her." He looked at me the way only a grandfather can look at someone he raised, equal parts fear and pride. "Cal," he said quietly, "do not do what I think you are about to do. Let the cops handle it." I leaned forward. "I already called them," I said. "They told me it is a civil dispute. Civil, Grandpa." "Like breaking an old man's bones is a matter of paperwork." I stood. They are not coming. But I am. I left the hospital with my helmet in one hand and a storm in the other. Outside, the wind cut through the smell of asphalt and rage. I made 2 calls. The first was to Razor, my cousin and president of the Iron Sentinels Motorcycle Club, the kind of men who do not do bake sales or charity rides. "You busy?" I asked. His laugh rumbled through the phone. "Always." "What is the job?" "HOA trouble," I said. A pause. "We talking bylaws or blood?" "Blood. Where and when, that was all. No hesitation." The second call was to a number I had not dialed in years, a fixer I had once known overseas. "Need eyes on a suburban war zone," I told him. "And fast." When I got back to Fairlawn Ridge, the place looked like a Norman Rockwell painting that had been spray painted over with fear. White fences, manicured lawns. But behind every curtain, you could feel it, the dread. Karen Tom had turned the neighborhood into her personal fiefdom. The mailbox posts were identical now. Every house the same muted beige. Even the laughter of kids had vanished, replaced by silence that felt bought and paid for. I parked the Harley in front of Grandpa's house, the rumble of its engine breaking the quiet like a defibrillator. I stood on the porch where he had taught me to fix my first bike, where I had carved my initials into the railing when I was 10. The wood was splintered now. The front door hung crooked on its hinge. Inside, the lamp was knocked over, a coffee mug shattered on the floor, all silent evidence of violence. I could still smell the coppery tang of blood under the faint sweetness of pipe smoke. That is when I decided this was not just an act of greed. It was an act of war. Fairlawn Ridge had not always been this way. 40 years ago, it was paradise for working men, a quiet cul-de-sac America forgot to ruin. I had spent summers here chasing fireflies and playing catch with Grandpa until the streetlights came on. The neighbors had barbecues instead of meetings. The only association was the unspoken one. You help your neighbor, they help you. But people like Karen never build, they consume. She came 5 years ago, buying the biggest house on the corner like a queen claiming her castle. Too polished, too political, too loud. Within months, she resurrected the long-dead HOA, crowned herself president, and began her campaign of community improvement. At first, it was small. Letters about trash bins, fines for unmowed lawns. People shrugged and paid. That is how tyranny always begins. Politely. Then came the color mandates, surveillance cameras, security patrols. She banned front yard gardens, basketball hoops, and even wind chimes for being aesthetic hazards. What she was really doing was conditioning compliance. You either submitted or she buried you under fees and threats. Most people broke. The few who did not, like my grandpa, became targets. I remember visiting him one summer after she had started her crusade. He was out repainting his mailbox beige to avoid another fine. "You should move," I told him. "Find somewhere quieter." He wiped sweat from his brow, gave me that crooked grin that had scared off every drill sergeant he had ever met. "This is my quiet, son, my piece of earth. I fought for this country so nobody could tell me what color my damn mailbox should be." He was stubborn, the good kind and the dangerous kind. Then, 6 months ago, the rumors started. A big tech company wanted Fairlawn Ridge for a new campus. Karen was not acting alone. She was the inside agent, softening up the neighborhood for the buyout. The plan was simple: bleed residents dry with fines, push them into foreclosure, then buy the lots for pennies. She would turn loyalty into leverage, neighbor against neighbor, until the last holdouts caved. But she had underestimated one thing: what happens when you hit an old soldier's family. I spent that night in Grandpa's living room, staring at the broken door and the empty rocking chair where he used to read his morning paper. Every creak of the house sounded like a whisper saying, "Fight back." Outside, the sprinklers clicked to life, rhythmically hissing across manicured lawns that had become graves for decency. I knew then what needed to be done. This was not just revenge, it was reclamation. I took out my phone again, opened a notepad, and typed 3 words: 72 hours, start now. Then I sent it, not to Karen Tom, but to Razor. His reply came 10 seconds later: "We ride at dawn." Her plan was cruel in its elegance: bleed the old guard until they begged for mercy. The HOA was not just a homeowners association anymore, it was a siege engine, and Karen Tom was the one pulling the levers. Her job was not community service. It was psychological warfare. She fined widows for cracked driveways, threatened veterans over flagpoles, sent legal notices that read like ransom letters. The goal was simple: make life so unbearable that the holdouts would sell cheap or die trying to stay. She was turning Fairlawn Ridge into a ghost town, one notice at a time. Grandpa had been one of the last to resist. The man could outstare a hurricane, but even hurricanes lose strength when they are alone. He had tried everything, calling the county, the papers, a lawyer, but Karen's influence ran deep. The local paper did not want trouble with a developer promising jobs. The county clerk looked the other way, and the lawyer? He folded after the first lawsuit threat. That is how corruption wins. Not with bullets, but with boredom and fear. Then came the breaking point. Karen escalated. She hired private security, ex-cops, ex-soldiers, mercenaries dressed as neighborhood watch, the kind who carried more muscle than conscience. And that is when they came for him. I stood in Grandpa's wrecked living room, watching the sunlight crawl across broken glass and overturned furniture. Every shadow felt like a witness. The rage that had been simmering since the hospital hardened into steel. I was not going to wait for justice. I was going to build it, piece by piece. I texted Razor a single word, now. Less than an hour later, the low, animal growl of Harley engines rolled over the cul-de-sac like thunder. Curtains trembled. The ghosts of Fairlawn Ridge peeked through their blinds, watching an army arrive. The Iron Sentinels were not subtle. They did not sneak. They announced. A line of matte black bikes idled in front of Grandpa's house, exhaust curling like smoke signals. Razor led the pack, 6'4", beard like a bear's mane, tattoos crawling down his arms like stories written in blood and asphalt. "You were not kidding," he said as he dismounted, his boots crunching gravel. "Someone actually laid hands on the old man?" "Snapped his arm like a branch," I said. His jaw tightened. "Who?" "HOA president. Karen Tom. She has got hired help." The humor drained from his face. He looked past me at the shattered door and nodded. "Then she has got a problem." Behind him stood the rest of the Sentinels, Bear, Twitch, Bishop, and a dozen more. Each one had that quiet, coiled stillness you only see in men who have already made peace with chaos. The kind who do not bluff. The kind who, when they move, the world moves with them. For the first time in years, Fairlawn Ridge felt alive. Not safe, but awake. That is when I heard my name. Cal. It was Fred, the neighbor 2 doors down. Khaki shorts. Sweat-stained polo. Nerves twitching like a rabbit's. He half jogged across the yard, glancing around like the trees had ears. "I saw the bikes. I knew it had to be you." "Oh God, Cal, you do not know what she is capable of." His voice cracked. "She has got drones. They fly at night, little buzzing things with cameras. One hovered outside my bathroom window last week." Twitch, standing nearby, perked up like a kid hearing about free candy. "Drones, huh?" he said, pulling a set of signal scanners from his vest. "Guess we are going bug hunting." Fred's panic was inconvenient, but useful. His words confirmed what I had suspected. This was not a neighborhood dispute. It was surveillance territory. Karen was not playing by local rules. She was running an intelligence op. "Anything else, Fred?" I asked. He nodded furiously. "Black SUVs. They patrol every night. Same route. They follow people who speak against her. My wife says she saw one outside the Hendersons' house twice last week. I looked at Razor. "We have got company," I said. He grinned. "Then let us go say hello." We did not plan on making noise that first night. Not the loud kind, anyway. Our goal was recon. Twitch set up in Grandpa's attic with his laptop, antennas sprouting like mechanical weeds. Within 30 minutes, he had eyes on Karen's network. "Consumer-grade DJI Phantoms," he said, smirking. "Easy pickings. Frequency is open enough. I could land one in her pool if I wanted." "Do not," I said. "Not yet. You never let me have fun." His fingers blurred across the keyboard, hijacking camera feeds one by one. On his screen, the neighborhood came alive. Rooftops, alleys, headlights, crawling like insects. Meanwhile, Bear and 3 others rolled through the streets at idle speed, pretending to be lost. The SUVs showed up right on schedule, 2 black Tahoes creeping along the curb like sharks in shallow water. 4 men inside each, radios crackling, eyes hidden behind mirrored lenses. Professionals, not local toughs. Mercenaries. The kind that do not knock twice. They are on a loop, Bear said over the comm. Predictable route. Back alley between Elm and Oak every hour. Predictable was good. Predictable meant exploitable. We picked our hunting ground, a narrow alleyway overgrown with lilac and shadow. One way in, one way out. We rolled a dumpster partway into the lane, enough to force any vehicle to slow down. Then we waited. The silence was heavy, filled only with the soft ticking of cooling engines and the distant hum of sprinklers. When the SUV turned the corner, headlights sweeping the walls, I could feel my pulse sink with the idling motor. The driver slowed to crawl speed, easing toward the obstruction. I gave a low whistle. The world exploded into motion. Glass shattered as my pipe smashed through the driver's window. Light flooded his face, a high-powered beam straight into his eyes. He screamed, blinded, as Razor and Bear came over the fence like phantoms. Doors ripped open, men dragged out, bodies hit asphalt with a chorus of curses and grunts. The entire takedown lasted 12 seconds. Clean, surgical, merciless. We zip-tied their wrists, hooded their heads, and vanished into the dark before anyone knew what happened. 3 of them we left gift-wrapped for the sheriff to find. 1 we kept. His name was Miller, 30-something, buzz-cut, forearms like tree trunks. We sat him in Grandpa's garage under a bare light bulb. Razor stood behind him, silent. I pulled off the hood. "You work for Karen Tom," I said. He glared up at me. "I work for whoever signs the checks. Then you are about to be unemployed." His lip curled. "You think this is some small-town shakeup? You have no idea who you are messing with." He was right about that. I had no idea yet, but I was about to. Before I could press him, Twitch burst in, grinning, laptop under one arm. "Boss," he said, "you might want to see this." He turned the screen around. The hacked drone feed was showing something, a live shot from above the park. Under the streetlight stood Karen Tom, and next to her a man I recognized even before the pixels cleared. Marcus Thorne. My stomach dropped. "No," I whispered. "It could not be. Thorne was supposed to be dead." He was not just any merc. He was a ghost from my past. A former CIA contractor who had sold out his own unit in Kandahar for a briefcase full of cash. Because of him, 2 of my brothers in arms never came home. The official report said he was killed in the ambush he orchestrated. Clearly, that report was fiction. And now, here he was, standing shoulder to shoulder with the woman who broke my grandfather's arm. The war had just escalated from local to personal. Twitch unmuted the feed, and Thorne's voice bled into the garage, smooth, confident, serpentine. "Relax, Karen. They are amateurs. Your job is pressure. Mine is cleanup. 72 hours? That is all I need. Once Omnicorp gets full signatures, we erase the rest." Omnicorp, a multinational tech conglomerate with more lawyers than soldiers. That is who she had been working for. They were the money behind the curtain, and Thorne was their muscle. The realization hit like a rifle round. This was not a property grab anymore. This was organized displacement, a corporate invasion. Miller's tough guy smirk faltered when he heard Thorne's name. I stepped closer. "You know him," I said. "Do you not?" He did not answer, but the twitch in his jaw was enough. "So tell me, soldier," I said quietly, "how does it feel working for a man who sells out his own team?" His eyes flicked to mine, and I saw it, the crack in his armor. "Thorne is a ghost," he muttered. "Not anymore," I said. "He is about to learn what happens when ghosts pick the wrong house to haunt." When you have spent enough time in war zones, you learn to trust silence. It is louder than gunfire. The silence that followed was deafening. Thorne had just made his first mistake. He had stepped into my world, and he did not even know it. Razor folded his arms. What is the play? I stared at the frozen frame of Thorne's face on the screen. That smug expression burned into my vision. "He thinks he has got 72 hours, I said. "Let us make sure he does not get 24. Outside, the Harley engines rumbled to life again, not as a threat, but as a promise. Fairlawn Ridge was not just a battlefield now, it was home turf. And home has a way of fighting back. We kept the one who talked least, the man with the snake tattoo curling around his neck like a warning label, Miller. He sat in Grandpa's garage under the harsh glare of a single bare bulb, sweat cutting rivers through the grime on his forehead. The other three had been gift-wrapped for the county deputies, courtesy of an anonymous 911 call from a concerned citizen. I wanted to make sure the ones we left behind would tell the right story, that the neighborhood was not unprotected anymore. Razor stood by the door, arms crossed, his silhouette filling the frame like a wall. Bear was beside him, silent, chewing on a toothpick the size of a nail. I sat across from Miller, the smell of motor oil and adrenaline thick in the air. "You work for Karen Tom," I said. "You came into my grandfather's house, broke his arm, and called it enforcement." Miller lifted his chin. "We enforce compliance." He resisted. His voice was steady, but his pulse was not. I could see the artery in his neck fluttering like a trapped moth. "Resistance," I said softly. "That is what you call an old man telling you to get off his porch?" He looked away, jaw clenched. "You do not understand, man. You are in over your head." "I have been in over my head before," I said, leaning forward. "The difference is, I know how to breathe underwater." His eyes flicked up, uncertain. "You have got no idea what you are dealing with," he continued. "This is not just some HOA president. She is connected, real connected." I smiled. Not kindly. "You mean Marcus Thorne?" The name hit him like a slap. His pupils dilated, his breath caught. "You know Thorne?" he muttered. "Better than you do," I said. He used to wear the same flag on his shoulder before he sold it for a paycheck. Miller froze. Twitch, who had been silent in the corner, stepped forward with his laptop. "Boss," he said. "You need to see this." He set it on the workbench, spun it around. The drone feed shimmered on screen, static cutting through the image. A park, late at night, two figures under a streetlight. Karen Tom. And next to her, the devil himself. Thorne had not changed. 10 years older, a little thicker around the middle, but the same self-satisfied smirk. He was handing Karen a duffel bag. Twitch unmuted the audio, and Thorne's voice spilled into the garage. Smooth and snake-slick. "Do not worry, Karen. They will sign. Fear is a reliable motivator. By tomorrow night, Omnicorp will have every deed it needs." Omnicorp again, the faceless monster buying up neighborhoods across the country under shell companies and fake committees. Now they had found their perfect weapon, a washed-up spook and a greedy suburban tyrant. Grandpa's broken arm was not random violence, it was tactical. A warning to the last few holdouts. Karen was not in control. She was just the local puppet dancing to Thorne's tune. I clenched my fist so tight the leather of my gloves creaked. "He is running the same play," I whispered. "Same pattern as Kandahar. Create chaos, manufacture fear, and then sell the solution." Razor frowned. "Meaning?" "Meaning Thorne is about to stage something that will make the news, a disaster that forces everyone to sign or flee." Twitch's fingers flew across the keyboard. "Boss," he said. "He is not bluffing." There was more footage. The drone feed jumped to another location, a storage unit near the edge of town. Inside, two men were loading crates into a van. Not ammo, not guns, explosives. The stenciled label read, "Gas line repair, county utilities." Except there was nothing repair about what they were packing. My blood ran cold. Thorne's voice echoed from another recording. "By morning, half the block will be unsafe for habitation. A tragic gas leak. The evacuation order will be mandatory. Our people will be there with buyout contracts. Sign or burn." The room went still. Even Razor, who could stare down a hurricane, just exhaled, slow. Twitch muttered, "That is not just intimidation. That is terrorism." Miller's mask cracked completely. "Jesus Christ," he whispered. "He is really doing it." I turned to him. "Where?" He hesitated. I slammed my palm on the table. Where? Chestnut Street, he barked. End of the cul-de-sac. Main gas valve. 2-man team, demo guy and lookout. 2 a.m. tonight. They are using C4, just enough to rupture the line. The gas fills basements. One spark and the whole block goes up. They will call it an accident. For a second, I did not move. The air felt thick, unbreathable. My grandpa's house was 2 doors from that valve. The Hendersons, with their newborn, lived right at the corner. The people Karen had been tormenting for months were about to become casualties in a corporate land grab. It was not war anymore. It was slaughter. I leaned in close until Miller could see every vein in my neck. You are going to help us stop it. He nodded, fast, terrified. Razor glanced at me. We call the cops? And tell them what? I said. That a bunch of bikers got intel from a hacked drone about a fake gas leak? They would laugh until the neighborhood was ash. No, this was on us. We had 6 hours. I sent Twitch to lock onto the van's GPS feed. Bear and 2 others started loading gear. Zip ties, radios, flashlights, body armor. We are not killing anyone, I said. We are intercepting and exposing. We need evidence, not bodies. Razor raised an eyebrow. And if they shoot first? Then they will regret it. While we prepped, I stepped outside for air. The night was heavy, the kind that presses on your chest. Fairlawn Ridge slept quietly, porch lights glowing like small, innocent lies. I remembered being a kid on this street, eating ice cream on the curb, while Grandpa tuned his old radio. Now I was gearing up to fight a covert demolition op 2 blocks from where I learned to ride a bike. Sometimes the line between soldier and son gets thin enough to bleed. Inside, Twitch was finishing the digital setup. He had hacked into the local emergency frequency, ready to jam any fake gas leak reports Thorne's crew might send. We have got their comms locked, he said. If they sneeze, I will hear it. Good, I said. Because if they pull that trigger, every innocent on this street dies. Razor cracked his knuckles. Then, let us make sure they do not get the chance. By 1 a.m., the sentinels were in position. The cul-de-sac on Chestnut was quiet, too quiet. Houses lined up like witnesses holding their breath. A van idled at the far end, lights off. 2 silhouettes inside. Twitch whispered through comms. Target confirmed. 2 males. Movement at the valve. My pulse slowed. Calm before the storm. I had been here before, different continent, same feeling. We ghosted in from 3 angles. Bear and Razor took the left flank. I took the right, staying low behind hedges trimmed within an inch of their lives. The demo man was on his knees, opening a steel access plate. The guard watched the street, shotgun slung casually, professional but complacent. They did not expect resistance from retirees and PTA moms. They had no idea what was waiting in their own shadows. I gave a low whistle. The world snapped like a rubber band. Razor hit the guard first, disarming him in 2 moves. Bear grabbed him by the vest and drove him into the grass with enough force to rattle windows. I lunged from the dark, kicking the demo man square in the chest. He went down hard, the C4 tumbling from his grip. His flashlight rolled away, spinning light across terrified eyes. I stomped his wrist before he could reach for anything else. Game over, I said quietly. We zip-tied both, hauled them into the bushes. Twitch, I whispered. Status? Distraction confirmed. Local patrol just pulled up at Fred's. You are clear for 10 minutes. Fred had done his part. The man who once panicked over trash pickup times was now buying us the seconds to save his street. Heroes are not always the ones holding weapons. I picked up the block of C4. It was real, military grade, professionally wired. Thorne's fingerprints were all over it. He had not changed his tactics, only his geography. They were going to rupture the line, I said. Let the gas fill the houses. 1 backfire, 1 spark, and this entire cul-de-sac would have gone up. Razor stared at the explosive. And we stopped it. For now, I said. But this is not over. We need proof. I dug into the demo man's pocket, found a burner phone. One number saved. Boss. An idea began forming. Dangerous, but effective. I called the number. The line clicked, then Thorne's voice oozed through, smooth as poison. Report. I kept my tone clipped, professional. Job is done. Line is primed. Good, he said. Leave the area. Once it blows, Omnicorp moves in. By this time tomorrow, it will all be ash. I smiled. Understood. I ended the call. Got it recorded? I asked. Twitch's voice came back, electric with triumph. Crystal clear, boss. That recording was gold, Thorne's own confession. But something inside me still twisted. Thorne did not sound like a man bluffing. He sounded like a man who had contingencies. There was something else he had not said, something worse lurking behind the calm. We could not just expose him. We had to corner him completely. That meant tomorrow night's HOA meeting, the last act in his grand plan, had to become ours. We loaded the prisoners, the evidence, and the C4 into the van. I drove while Razor rode shotgun, silent except for the occasional crack of his knuckles. The streets blurred past, washed in sodium light. You think this will stop him? He asked finally. No, I said. But it will make him bleed. Back at the safe house, Twitch was already deep in the laptop pulled from the van's glove box. Encrypted, he muttered. Military level, but not impossible. His fingers moved like a pianist in a war zone. You got an hour? He asked. You have got 30 minutes, I replied. He grinned. Challenge accepted. While Twitch worked, I sorted through the other files. One manila folder caught my eye, labeled Property Assessments Confidential. Inside were printed copies of buyout agreements. Each had a signature at the bottom, Karen Tom, residents' names, and then, stapled to the last page, a list of payment ledgers. I flipped through, scanning dates, amounts, account numbers. That is when I saw it, a name that did not belong. Arthur Jensen, my grandfather. The signature was perfect. His handwriting, his initials, his looping J that always dipped too low. A $50,000 payment authorized from a shell company tied to Omnicorp. The air left my lungs. My hands went cold. No, it had to be a forgery. But the longer I stared, the harder it was to deny. It looked real. The man who taught me right from wrong, who fought for his home, who wore his scars like medals, had signed with the enemy. Razor saw my face. What is it? I handed him the page. He frowned. Arthur Jensen, he read aloud. That is, yeah, I said, voice cracking. That is my grandpa. Bear leaned over, confusion etched on his broad face. That does not make sense, he muttered. He is the one they hurt. Why would he take their money? I did not have an answer. My brain was a storm. Betrayal? Manipulation? Was Grandpa playing both sides? Was his broken arm just theater to keep me angry? I wanted to believe it was fake, but the weight of that paper in my hand felt like truth. You going to confront him? Razor asked quietly. Not yet, I said. If he is dirty, I need to know why. And if he is not, then someone is setting him up. I folded the page and slipped it into my jacket. Either way, tomorrow we finish this. Twitch slammed his laptop shut. Got it, he said, decrypted and mirrored. You are going to want to see this. The screen filled with data, bank transfers, emails, meeting notes, Thorne's entire operation, naked and undeniable. Omnicorp contracts, Karen's bribe schedule, security rosters, even a press release titled Community Renewal Initiative Fairlawn Ridge Project. The launch date was tomorrow, right after the HOA meeting. He is planning to finalize the acquisition and burn the evidence, Twitch said. He will pin the explosion on a gas leak and walk away squeaky clean. I looked at the ledger again, at Grandpa's signature burned into the corner of my mind. Everything twisted together. The violence, the bribes, the lies. The truth was somewhere between the lines, waiting to detonate. I stood up, pushing the chair back. Tomorrow night, I said. We end it all. Thorn, Karen, the whole rotten tree. Razor grinned. Public execution? Public truth, I said. We will use their own stage, the HOA meeting. The residents, the cameras, everything. We stream it all. Twitch? I want every phone in this zip code tuned in. We are going to show them what their community leaders really look like. As the Sentinels started packing up, I caught my reflection in the window. The same eyes I saw in Thorn's drone feed, hard and hollow. For the first time, I was not sure who I was fighting for anymore. Justice? Revenge? Or redemption? Maybe all three. Outside, dawn broke slow and gray over Fairlawn Ridge. The neighborhood looked peaceful again, but I had learned peace here was just a costume for fear. The war had changed shape. Tomorrow, it would finally show its face. The next evening, Fairlawn Ridge looked like it was holding its breath. The same neighborhood that once obsessed over mailbox, paint, and lawn height was about to witness its own reckoning. The HOA clubhouse, usually filled with folding chairs, cookies, and passive-aggressive smiles, was now the stage for judgment. Karen Tom thought it would be her victory lap. She had no idea she was walking into an ambush made of truth. By 7 o'clock, every chair was filled. The air buzzed with fear and exhaustion, the kind that comes from years of quiet abuse. Faces I had known since childhood sat shoulder to shoulder, whispering like churchgoers before a sermon. My grandfather sat in the front row, left arm still in a sling, his expression carved from granite. I had not spoken to him since the night before. I did not know if I was looking at a victim or an accomplice, but I would find out soon enough. At exactly 7:02, Karen swept into the room like she owned it, which, in her mind, she did. She wore a white blazer sharp enough to cut glass, her hair perfect, her smile rehearsed. Behind her trailed 2 men in black suits, new bodyguards, the kind that move like bad news. Marcus Thorne walked in last, carrying the arrogance of a man who believed he had already won. The residents stared at him, not knowing they were looking at the man who had almost burned their homes to ash. "Good evening, everyone," Karen began, voice sweetened with poison. "I know it has been a challenging few weeks, but thanks to our partners at Omnicorp, we have an opportunity to start fresh. Once you sign these final agreements, the redevelopment can begin, and you will all be fairly compensated." She gestured to the stack of papers on the table like she was offering salvation. Around the room, people shifted uneasily. No one moved to sign. Karen's smile tightened. "Please," she said, her tone cooling, "let us not make this harder than it needs to be." That is when I spoke. "Oh, I think it is about to get a lot harder." Heads turned. I stepped forward from the back of the room, leather jacket creaking, boots echoing across the tile floor. Razor, Bear, and half the sentinels flanked me, spreading out silently along the walls. No guns, no threats, just presence, enough to make the air itself nervous. Karen's expression froze. "You are trespassing, Mr. Vance," she snapped. "This is a private meeting." "Not anymore," I said. "Now it is public." I gave a small nod toward the corner of the room where Twitch's setup was hidden, laptop wired into the clubhouse, projector and a transmitter feeding into every phone, tablet, and TV in the neighborhood. The slideshow behind Karen flickered, glitching from pastel renderings of future homes to a live video feed. The audience gasped. On screen, drone footage played. Karen standing in the park with Thorne, accepting a duffel bag full of cash. Thorne's voice echoed through the speakers. "By morning, half the block will be unsafe for habitation. A tragic gas leak." The crowd erupted. Shouts, curses, disbelief. Karen's smile shattered. Thorne jumped to his feet, shouting, "Turn that off!" His bodyguards reached for their weapons, but stopped when Bear took one deliberate step forward. His expression said it all. "Do not." The footage shifted again. Payment ledgers, contracts, dates. I spoke over the noise. These are the records of bribes Karen accepted to sell out her own community. Proof of a criminal conspiracy to defraud homeowners and commit domestic terrorism. The words hung heavy in the air. Karen tried to speak, but her voice came out strangled. Lies! Fabricated evidence! I turned to her, voice low. Then you should have chosen better accomplices. They kept receipts. The next clip began, Miller's confession video. The mercenary's face filled the screen, bruised but clear. Orders came from Marcus Thorne, he said. Gas main, 2-man job, C4 charge. Evacuation cover story. Complete buyout after ignition. Gasps rippled through the room. Thorne's face drained of color. He took a half step back, his hand drifting toward his jacket pocket. My voice cut through the tension like a blade. Do not. He hesitated, then went for it anyway. The pistol was half out before Razor's hand was on his wrist, slamming it to the table. The gun skittered across the floor. Chaos broke loose, shouts, chairs scraping, but then another voice rose above it all. Stop! It was my grandfather! He stood slowly, one arm in the sling, the other holding something small and black, a recorder. His voice, rough but steady, filled the silence. Because while Cal was gathering his proof, he said I was gathering mine. He pressed play. Thorne's voice came from the tiny speaker. Just take the money, old man. You helped me get Karen on board. Sign the final papers and walk away. Then, Grandpa's voice, sharp with fury. The deal was to get rid of her, not destroy the neighborhood. I am out. The recording ended with the crack of bone, his arm breaking, and his cry of pain. The room went silent. Then someone whispered, "Oh my God." I exhaled for what felt like the first time in hours. The page I had found with Grandpa's signature had not been betrayal, it had been bait. He had signed under the pretense of cooperation, knowing it would put him close enough to Thorne to expose the entire scheme. The injury that had ignited my rage was not a manipulation, it was the price he paid for trying to stop it himself. Thorne's composure disintegrated. He lunged for the exit, but the sentinels were faster. Bear's massive arm closed around him like a steel trap. Karen tried to follow, but Razor blocked her path, shaking his head. "Stay," he said. "Show is not over." Sirens wailed in the distance. Right on cue. The clubhouse doors burst open, and half a dozen state troopers stormed in, body armor, rifles, flashlights, slicing through the chaos. "Nobody move!" the lead officer shouted. Thorne froze mid-struggle. Karen screamed. Residents ducked and covered. For a heartbeat, I thought we were all going to get arrested. Then the trooper with the granite face looked at me and said, "You must be Cal Vance." I nodded cautiously. "And you are late." For the first time all night, someone smiled. "We got a call from a Mr. Arthur Jensen," the trooper said. "Came with a hard drive full of evidence and a warrant request. Told us to show up at 7:30 sharp. Of course, Grandpa had planned for everything, even me. He had known I would come charging in like a hammer, so he had made sure the law was there to catch the nails afterward. The troopers moved fast. Thorne was cuffed and dragged out, spitting curses. Karen went next, sobbing as the reality of her kingdom's collapse hit her like a tidal wave. The residents cheered, years of fear breaking into relief. When the chaos settled, I found Grandpa leaning against the wall, breathing hard but smiling that crooked, unkillable smile. I walked up to him, unsure what to say. He beat me to it. "You always did like a dramatic entrance," he rasped. "You always did like keeping secrets," I said. "Had to," he replied. "You would have stopped me otherwise." He looked out over the room, now filled with neighbors hugging, crying, thanking one another. "You see, Cal, people forget that communities are not built on rules. They are built on people willing to fight for them." His eyes flicked up to mine. "Sometimes that means fighting your own blood to keep them honest." I smiled, despite the exhaustion. "You played me." "Maybe," he said, "but you played your part perfectly." He patted my shoulder with his good hand. "You brought the fire. I just made sure it burned the right things." By morning, the story was everywhere. News vans lined the streets. Corrupt HOA president and developer arrested in domestic terror plot. Omnicorp stock dropped 12% overnight. Fairlawn Ridge, once a footnote in a real estate portfolio, had become a symbol of resistance. The residents voted Fred in as interim president. His first act, dismantle 90% of the HOA rules. He even let kids paint their mailboxes again. The Sentinels stayed for one last barbecue in Grandpa's yard. Smoke curled into a clear blue sky as neighbors who had not spoken in years shared beers and stories. Razor grilled steaks. Twitch set up speakers and played old rock ballads that made the kids roll their eyes. The same men who had terrified the neighborhood 2 nights ago were now shaking hands, laughing awkwardly, part of something good for once. As the sun set, Grandpa stood beside me by the flagpole. He raised the flag with his one good arm, the fabric snapping in the wind. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then, he said quietly, "There is a fine line between doing what is right and doing what is necessary." I watched the flag climb. "And where do you think we landed?" I asked. He smiled. "Right where we needed to be." For the first time in a long time, the air of Fairlawn Ridge felt clean. No more drones, no more fear. Just laughter, smoke, and the sound of kids playing in the street. Peace does not always come from quiet. Sometimes it is what is left after the noise is done, and as the last light of day slid over the rooftops, I realized something I had not felt since the army. Home is not a place. It is the people who refuse to let it burn.